It's a lovely story. We were inspired by a viral video that was showing a moment of when a young black girl, she's in the States, she discovers that she's going to be adopted. A very emotional moment. She's sobbing, really, and so would you be if you're watching it, as she's opening a box with the document and she flips it over and confirms that her adoption, together with her brother and sister, will be taking place by her foster parents, who are white. Lots of people have been sharing this story. We wanted to continue the conversation. Comedian Joy Carter was abandoned in Nigeria as a baby during the Biafran War, then adopted by a white couple who brought her to England. But I want to meet Joy and hear more of the details from her. Hi, Joy. You're very welcome.
Hi, it's lovely to speak to you. Thanks for having me.
So well, talk us through what you remember of those early years of being adopted.
I think my earliest memory was my parents explained to me what happened, and I can still remember it. I must have been around the age of 3. And I can remember my parents telling me that I was found next to my dead twin sister, and then picked up and taken to the local hospital where there were 50 other babies. And obviously a hospital is a hospital. It's not a creche. They can't cope with babies. So they were looking for people to help out and look after them. And at the same time, my parents have gone out there individually, met, fell in love, had their first child, and they just went along to the hospital just to help out. And out of the 50 babies, they were handed me to look after temporarily. But apparently after a few weeks, my dad famously said to my mother, "We've got to adopt this baby." So that was how my journey to the UK started.
And they came back to the UK. Have you seen this little video of this little girl?
Yes, and I absolutely loved it. Ironically, my mother actually has just given me my own adoption papers, so I actually saw them for the first time myself. Yeah, they've been up in the loft or something. My mum's been doing a big clear out.
When did you see them?
Well, I saw them ironically about 4 days ago. My mum said, "You better have these now." Yeah, ironically, and I'm not going to lie, I've actually had problems even opening them because you feel so emotional as an adult.
Of course.
I can't even open them without feeling kind of, oh my gosh, you know.
So let's talk through that, actually. So the papers were there. Your mum what age are you now, Joy, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I'm a great big adult. Yes, I'm not gonna mention, but yes, I'm big enough to know this.
No, but in the sense that they've been there all the time and you haven't got to open them yet. So talk us through. What were they, in an envelope or on a shelf? She handed them to you. What did they look like?
They were very faded white documents, very dusty, as you can imagine, very faded, saying, the official documents that I was found in Nigeria, and I didn't even know the town. Enugu, as probably said wrongly, but that's where the town I was found. And all that's there. I was found near a river, and that could have just been a bit of water, so I have tried to trace, but there's nothing for me to find. And I've just had to and it was very weird, because you don't think it's going to make you cry, but it kind of does. It does.
It is Enugu, as lots of our listeners will be saying. They might even be there. So there's Enugu State, which distinguishes it from the city of Enugu. So a state in the southeast of Nigeria. And I say lots of our listeners like, oh my goodness, as they feel probably a connection with you. But you opened them, you looked at them. What feelings were going through as you looked at those papers? Because that is a connection to your past.
Yeah, just the enormity of the miracle that happened to me. I was watching on the news Theresa May talking, in Nigeria. And again, I was filling up thinking, if I would have stayed in that country and survived, having no parents and all the other things that it could have been in an orphanage, I could have been there. That my life would have taken such a different trajectory. So there's that mad feeling of going lost and sadness of all the culture and the colours and the smells that I don't know. I've never been back. But then the amazing life I've had here with my family and my friends, and despite all the challenges of being obviously black in a white family. I was very bullied at school. People stared at me. My hair was crazy. I don't like spicy food. I could go on. But it's such an amazing journey. And I was watching. That's why I just burst into tears like everybody else who watched that clip of that little girl, because it's a life-changing, forever moment.
It is. I suppose what's so deep about it is these different lives that you could have lived. And same for that little girl who is loved by her parents, that were her foster parents, will be her adoptive parents, that she is now going to have this different future, right, from the one that it could have been. But can you tell me a little bit more? Because I mentioned the little girl in the States is black, her parents are white. You had the same ethnic background as that little girl. You're black and your parents were white, as you mentioned, and brought her to England. You mentioned you were bullied, though. Was it because of race?
Yeah, I mean, I was okay when we lived in Leicester, very multicultural in this country. But when we moved
That's
up
one
to
of the cities in the UK, yeah.
Yeah, but when we moved up north to a place in Lincolnshire, it was just basically there weren't many of the black children. I was the only black child in that school, and it was just ignorance, really. Of course, I know that as an adult, but as a child, you can't understand why people are suddenly staring at you. I thought it was my shoes, to be fair, and I remember I wore a more trendy outfit the next day, and the bullying continued, and that's when I thought, oh my gosh, I'm black. That was my first moment, age 12, of realising that I am different. Even though at home everybody loves me, but at school it was a very different story. So I know I know the clashes of identity and the loss of identity is something which these children will face. But there's a lot more information now to help them through that process.
And these children are American. She's been adopted with her brother and sister, which I think changes things again. But do you ever feel the need to return to Nigeria or understand more of your beginnings?
Do you know, people always ask me that. I've got Nigerian friends who are always desperately trying to drag me back.
It is a great country.
I know. People are desperately trying to take me. And I've always said I'd like to go back and do something. Because obviously I'm a comedian. I've got an hour show dissecting the joys and the idiosyncrasies of my story. So I know that, every comic I know has gone to their birthplace, and especially Nigeria, have written, that's a brand new part of the, closure and a part of their life story. So I know I want to go back. I feel ready to go back. But it's just difficult because I don't know anyone there. Now I probably have thousands of people wanting to take me, but I generally don't turn up as a tourist. So that's something which I know I do want to do. But just because I feel I want to celebrate my the fullness of my identity, not just my, obviously I'm a Londoner now. I still see myself as being a northerner, living in the north of this country, but I do feel it will be a lot of closure.
I think also listening to you, Joy, I think you're going to love it in Nigeria. People are so warm. They are so chatty. They'll want to know more about you. I'm going to give out our WhatsApp number, +44 77 30 75 1925, which is also on our Twitter page at BBC OS, because I have a feeling that some of our listeners will probably have some suggestions for you. You've probably got a whole load of new friends now. But when you identify, do you ever bring Nigerian into your identity?
Yes, yes and no. I mean, it's difficult because I've only really got Nigerian friends here who tell me about it and introduce me to the food.
So you've never been?
No, I've never been. I've never really felt the need to, because I feel kind of whole as a person. I've had a lot of counselling in my life to deal with those clashes of identities. I've got a lot of other friends who are adopted, and that's been amazing to meet up with amazing other stories, because the mishmash of your identity of who you are can be overwhelming. So I've not felt the need, because I feel quite whole as a person. So it's more to go back just to visualise it, and that would just help me celebrate the gift that life is. And also, can I just say to anybody thinking of adopting, please do adopt, because living in a foster situation is not great for children. You get a lot more damaged moving around, and the lack of stability is really important. So
which is what that new mother of that lovely little girl in that video mentioned, that they spent 3 years in foster care before finally being able to adopt them. Joy, you've been a joy. Joy Carter.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for speaking to us here on a...
Yeah, thanks, Joy. Really, really great to have you on the programme, and what an amazing story. Really, really appreciate your time and sharing it.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Take care. Have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.